Managing a team of investigators just got easier with TrackOps, the all-in-one case management software. Are you ready to enhance case flows and drive efficiency? TrackOps offers powerful management and coordination tools to streamline workflows and communication, all designed to keep your team synchronized and focused on the task at hand. With TrackOps, you can easily distribute workloads, track individual performance, and ensure deadlines are met. Plus, the TrackOps mobile app allows investigators to access case activities on the go. And the TrackOps video app allows for simple and consistent timestamping, all included at no extra cost. Start streamlining your investigation process today. Visit trackops.com for a free 15-day trial and experience the power of efficient team management. TrackOps, empowering teams, simplifying management. Protect your business in an ever-changing world with Conflict Pro, the comprehensive solution from Conflict International. Designed to mitigate risks like fraud, industrial espionage, and data leaks, Conflict Pro offers proactive strategies to safeguard your operations and reputation. With tailored services such as overall risk management, cyber surveillance, and penetration testing, we provide the tools you need for enhanced security and peace of mind. Whether you're a small business or a global enterprise, our subscription-based model ensures flexibility and affordability. Visit conflictinternational.com to learn more and take the first step in protecting your business today. This episode is brought to you by 4 Pillars Research, a nationwide leader in policy limit searches, now expanding its services to support private investigators working with injury attorneys. Since 2019, 4 Pillars Research has been known for its professionalism and top-tier customer service. If you're a private investigator, you know how crucial it is to provide accurate and complete information to your clients. Research can be time-consuming and challenging, especially when accuracy is non-negotiable. That's where 4 Pillars Research comes in. Unlike other firms that outsource their work, 4 Pillars handles everything in-house, ensuring you receive precise policy limit details of the at-fault party before litigation even begins. With 4 Pillars, you get more than just data. Each client is paired with a dedicated client engagement specialist, ensuring personalized service and meticulous attention to detail. And for those of you handling multiple cases, they even offer loyalty programs for high-volume clients. So if you're looking to elevate your investigative work and provide your clients with the best possible service, contact 4 Pillars Research today. Let them handle the complex research so you can focus on delivering results. That's 4 Pillar Research, your trusted partner in policy limit research. Reach out now and take your investigative services to the next level. Special announcement. Congrats to our very own host, Matt Spaier. He was just named a 2024 Top 100 Entrepreneur by Top 100 magazine. Matt continues to push the envelope for business development in the private investigation space. So big congrats to Matt and the team at Satellite Investigations. Welcome to this week's episode of PI Perspectives. Today we welcome back John Rowan. One of the biggest news stories out there today is the recent assassination of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. John discusses the incident and his background as the chief of detectives in Suffolk County, New York. The guys also discuss how investigative and security professionals can help offer services to prevent this type of incident from happening again. So please welcome John Rowan and your host, private investigator Matt Spaier.
And welcome everyone to this next episode of PI Perspectives. This is Matt Spaier, your host. I'm here with John Rowan from Conflict International. Was not going to do an episode the rest of the year, but I figured I'd jump on and just kind of get a different perspective on this shooting that happened. The CEO of the United Healthcare here in New York, Brian Thompson, as we're recording this on December 11th. Things are still unfolding and we're getting more and more information. But with John Rowan's background here in New York, I thought it'd be cool to come on and talk a little bit about the incident and then talk about how we as investigators and security professionals can be used to help prevent things like this. So John, I want to welcome you back to the program. How are you?
It's good to see you again and appreciate you taking the time to speak to me today.
Oh, definitely. So Since the last time we chatted, you actually there was an election. Some things happened. I'm not talking about the presidential elections. Something personally for you. So why don't you tell folks what you've been up to?
So I was fortunate enough to be elected as the 2025 president of the New York State Eastern Canada chapter of the FBI National Academy Associates. So it's a great pleasure. I've been involved in that organization for 16 years now,
Oh,
and I'm looking forward to a year of being busy, but also just continuing to move the organization forward.
no, that's great, man. A huge honor and congratulations to you. Knowing you personally and seeing your involvement in that association, I think it's great that you've been able to make that time commitment and rise into it. So, congrats to you, sir.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, so we're going to talk about what's been going on here in New York, and what there's so much content out there, so many people, geez, going on. I feel like my feeds on LinkedIn are getting drowned by all this, and
Mhm.
all the social media feeds too. If you go on TikTok, it's just kind of ridiculous. Now there's all these women that are
Supporting.
professing their love for this Lothario assassin here. So
Mhm.
yeah, so I figured we'd just kind of do a take on it. So with your background, heading up a very prestigious police institution in Suffolk County before you retired, you're no stranger to high profile incidents. What was your first impression as all this was going down, and how things were handled?
Well, overall, my first impression was naturally one of shock. I mean, this individual was clearly targeted, as we know now, and it was apparent at that time that he was targeted. The other first impression I had was the fact that the suspect was clearly familiar with his weapon. We saw him what appeared to be a malfunction in the weapon. He cleared it, continued firing, and obviously, the other first impression I had was that there was clearly going to be a lot of pre-operational planning on the part of the suspect.
Yeah.
So my first takes on that were like, okay, so this is a little bit more than just a random robbery gone wrong in the streets of New York. This was a targeted murder and with some pre-operational planning.
Yeah, it's crazy how we have this technology, this video technology, and there are cameras all over the city. And the individual was picked up at different parts of the city, as it was unfolding and everything. And it's amazing to see because, like, back in the 70s, the 80s, even the 90s, we'd still be asking, how the heck did this happen? Who did this? You know, where do we go with this? And just seeing, like, forensically how technology has put such an assist on doing police work. It's impressive. I was actually out of the country when this was going down. I was in London at the Offshore Alerts conference, and it was interesting to see everyone's take on that too, as that was going down, and being from New York and saying, "Hey, this is my city," and even like being at that very location even weeks earlier with you.
Yes.
Like
Mhm.
we had a
We were
meeting
right there.
literally in the
Yeah.
building. I remember meeting somebody at the bar in the Hilton before we went to our meeting, um who was doing business as well, and just seeing that craziness, how it unfolded, and then like the next day, and I remember like the day before the guy was caught, I was speaking with somebody. I'm like, it's only a matter of time. Like these guys are like they're finding their way here. It's really impressive.
Right. Well, you made a good point about how technology has changed things in investigations, both in the public sector and on the private side.
Yeah.
Even during my career, which started in 1993, and how video in the last even 10 years, or particularly in the last 5 to 8 years, really changed investigations. And in New York City, that's only magnitude, 1,000 times because of all the cameras. But like you said, years ago, if we were lucky, if we had a gas station robbery, and that the video that may have been recorded wasn't written over before we were able to obtain it, or it was grainy, it wasn't, good enough. nowadays, and particularly in a case like this with the NYPD, they're going out and they're going to track an individual who commits a crime, both at the time of the incident, post incident, and then, which is the interesting part, is they go back pre incident. So they can build a timeline that really boxes that suspect in to say that we know where you were before the crime, we know you were at the crime, and we know where you went after the crime. And
Yeah.
naturally, that all leads to the ultimate apprehension, as it did in this case.
Yeah.
I will say that the other part of technology that has obviously increased things is, cell phones. We talk about cell phone tracking all the time, even on the private side. And then, some of the information about the e-bike, the city bike that he used, having, GPS capabilities. So I was confident from day one, that the NYPD was going to get this guy. I just felt that there was way too much meat on the bone, as the saying goes, and I think they handled it brilliantly. I was confident. In fact, I think in the very soon after, they had a good inkling, if not an identification on who this was.
Yeah. I feel like they were holding back a little bit of information as well. They probably knew
Well,
when they were telling everybody.
yeah, well, you know what it is, Matt. When you have high profile cases, you have to use the media to your advantage, but you also have to use them to satisfy their need for information. You know, the NYPD and New York City itself was thinking about how do we, we had a big event that night.
Yeah.
The Christmas tree lighting. So you had a million people extra coming into the city or so just to see these different events that are going on, and they had to ensure people that it's still safe to come.
Yeah.
So they had to put out some information, and yet they have to always hold back information. And I saw that in my time. We had, naturally not an event, excuse me, as big as this, but cases where you use the media to your advantage,
Yeah.
and you use the public's help when you can and when you need it.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's times where, the answer is it's a continuing investigation, and we're not going to get into that because
Sure.
you
Sure.
have to hold some things back.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting. And I actually thought of you when they're like, oh, we recovered a wrapper and a bottle. So I was like, okay, genetic
Yeah,
technology. Here we go. Like,
right,
here,
right.
we're going to pin things down. Right. So,
Yeah, and
uh,
from a particular case that I was involved with, that with DNA technology, and that's a part of almost every investigation. I mean, it's amazing how much that can either prove or disprove someone's involvement in
yeah.
a particular crime. And
Yeah.
it's become a standard part of criminal investigations at every level,
Yeah. Yeah.
not just on a homicide.
Just very impressive to see how things work. And I think the other cool part of this is the crowdsourcing of the intelligence as well, right? So you look at the media getting pictures and social media getting out images and things like that, and counting on John Q. Public to help out with this. That's a big piece of the puzzle here as to how this clown was located in Pennsylvania for sure.
Well, absolutely, and I give credit to that person who recognized him. I don't know if you saw the photos
Yeah.
of the individual when he was in McDonald's, and I probably did almost 31 years in law enforcement, and I could tell you,
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to recognize that guy. I mean, that was
Yeah.
some pick on that suspect from that, but that goes to your point. You have to get out those images. You have to utilize the public-private partnership,
Yeah.
even in gathering the video throughout the city. Many of those sources of video are going to be, private organizations, private security, and
Yeah.
you have to have those relationships and the willingness to cooperate together, because that's what ultimately brings the case home.
Well, 100%, right? And the reason I wanted you to come on and kind of talk about this, so the PI perspectives, right? We're talking to investigative professionals, security guard management, risk assessment, things of that nature. I don't want to beat a dead horse here about the facts of what happened and all that, because you can get that news from essentially
Right.
anywhere, right? So
Right.
I wanted to talk about how we as investigators, as security professionals, can offer our services or just kind of be involved in setting policies and procedures and helping this to not happen again. and understand that this is going to have an impact in our industry, both job wise, but also potentially information wise, right? So when you start hearing this individual saying, "Oh, well, I developed the location of this individual through open source material," right? I went out and I did research, and I was able to develop things on my own as far as scheduling goes, and things allegedly, right? That there's this talk of like, how did he know this person was going to be there at that particular time, right? This is something that can be damaging for our industry when you get some sort of politician saying, okay, we need to limit the amount of intelligence that's out there, and we got to make it harder to get these sorts of things, right? And that could have a real impact in our industry, and just understanding how to get in front of that. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that from the security professionals side of the topic, clearly we have to maintain full cooperation between the security industry, and the law enforcement partners.
Mhm.
That would be number one. Number two, as far as limiting the open source intelligence from a governmental perspective, I don't see that truly happening. I think what we need to see more is that individuals, whether they be high profile or high net worth individuals, and even the average person, being aware of what they're posting on social media about their whereabouts. I can recall years ago, we were having a series of home burglaries, and the one fact pattern that came out of the similarity between the burglaries was that they were homes of persons who were out at either wakes or funerals. Because what the suspects were doing, they were looking at obituaries, and then they were targeting these homes.
Right.
So now that's going back a number of years. It just goes to show you that the more information that you put out there on your personal whereabouts, your personal itinerary, um, exposes you more. And I think it's important that while open source intel is not constrained in any way, I think it's more on the individual or the corporation to be smart about what they're putting in.
Absolutely. So you start talking about, okay, how do I be more insightful? What are the risks that are out there, and ultimately prevention? I think that's where our industry comes into that, right? So it's a great article put out by Mike LaCourt from Conflict International, covering these very items, and we have a product that we use, both you and I, John, here in New York, or in the U.S. for Conflict International, that we're calling it Conflict Pro. And essentially, what it is, it's pulling all these aspects together, identifying threats, and being more proactive about things. Right? How do you know whether or not you're a target? A lot of these CEOs have no idea that the life they're living, the positions they're holding, that there could be potential threats out there, people watching them, and planning. You and I, before we started recording this, we're talking about football players. You're talking about high profile people that are out there that are getting their homes broken into, and things of those natures, right? Like, people don't realize that there is that danger and that risk, right?
Right. Well, I think, and that's where the professional investigation and professional security industry comes in. And for us at Conflict International, and particularly with Conflict Pro, we provide the professional guidance and expertise for those individuals that you're talking about that may not know that they're potentially a target of, whether it be physical violence or perhaps some sort of other crime, like a property crime, like in the case of, you had Travis Kelsey, Patrick Mahomes, most recently Joe Burrows just the other night.
Yeah.
Their homes were burglarized while they're out, playing football.
Yeah, it happens in
And
basketball too. The guy in Chicago.
yeah, there was a Minnesota Timberwolves back in September. Mike Conley's house got broken into,
Mhm.
and um, it's quite common. And I know the Players Association in the MLB, I'm sorry, in the NFL and the NBA have warned their players about this. But this is something for the players themselves, or the players associations, or any other high net worth individuals or high profile individuals to considering a product like Conflict Pro that does a full assessment.
Yeah.
Um, you know, you and I have spoken, security comes in layers, right?
Yeah.
And in light of this shooting of Brian Thompson, there's a lot of calls all over the internet. Much like you, my LinkedIn page is blowing up with, every single executive protection company calling for, we need more executive protection.
Yeah.
Executive protection is one part of the whole layer of security.
Yeah.
And while it's important, don't get me wrong, I do feel that if he had at least one EP person with him, that this shooting may have occurred, but I don't think it would have been a homicide. I think there would have been a reaction by the executive protection agent and probably put an end to this pretty quick.
Yeah.
But that's one layer. And Conflict Pro provides all those other layers, which I feel are just as equally, if not more so important.
Yeah, I think we're going to tap out and take a quick break. But when we come back, I want to jump into those layers because I think you bring up a really good point, man. It's so much more than just having that guard at your side. There's the correct way to do this, and then there's the way that all the Monday morning quarterbacks will say, "Hey, you should have done it this way." But it's so much more than EP on the way you provide these things. So everybody sit tight. When we come back, we're going to really dive down and drill down on this topic and give you guys some pointers or just some talking points from a security standpoint on this situation and how to prevent it from happening. So sit tight. We'll be right back.
Do you enjoy our podcast and the guests we bring you? Since 2019, Matt and his team have done their very best to give you amazing shows each week. If you feel like our show has helped you to be a better investigator, or maybe even inspired you to become an investigator, please let us know. We're looking for testimonials. Drop Matt an email with a recorded 20 to 30 seconds of you talking about this podcast. You can also email him something verbal about the website. His email is matthew.s@satellitepi.com. And if you really feel blessed for having this content, consider supporting Matt and our show by joining Investigators Toolbox. You really have to see version 2.0. And at just 49 cents a day, it's a no-brainer. After 4 years of development, Scope Now is proud to announce the release of Grid. Grid combines OSINT with real-time physical data to achieve new levels of intelligence gathering. Grid supports over 50 data types and hundreds of thousands of sources. Upgrade your OSINT capabilities with Grid and elevate your intelligence team today at scopenow.com. The Campbell Group has teamed up with PI Perspectives to offer listeners top-notch, affordable insurance solutions. Private investigators can get insurance for their business for as low as $305 per year. Apply now at piperspectivesinsurance.com and receive a quote back within 24 hours. Check out the PI Institute of Education at piinstitute.com. Since 1989, Kelly Riddle has been teaching on subjects such as surveillance, nursing home investigations, insurance fraud, domestic investigations, hidden assets, and accident scene investigations. The PI Institute of Education is a featured learning partner in the investigatorstoolbox.com. So check out the free content on the site, then visit the Institute for more great savings on additional classes. Over the past year, our industry has been the target of foreign governments and agencies that have attempted to recruit unsuspecting investigators to gather intelligence or immediate expatriates. PI Perspectives is teaming up with the Federal Bureau of Investigations to get the word out about this ongoing crisis. If you've been contacted by an individual or company that might seem suspicious, please contact the FBI at tips.fbi.gov. You can also contact the New York field office at 212-384-1000 to report suspicious activity in any state. The link is also in the show notes. Even if you completed a job and it still doesn't sit right with you, you can report this activity. The only way to stop this trend is to work together. So let's do it. Satellite Investigations has launched its new website full of great new content. Matt and his team have released some great informative blogs. Make sure you log in to LinkedIn And follow Satellite Investigations for the latest content.
And welcome back to PI Perspectives. It's Matt Spaier, your host, here again with John Rowan from Conflict International. John heads up the U.S. division for Conflict, and we're talking about the shooting that happened. The CEO Brian Thompson, and John, I want to welcome you back to the program.
Thanks. Thank you, Matt.
Yeah. Okay. So before we tapped out for commercial break, we were talking about executive protection and the role of executive protection in preventing incidents like this. But we had teased that there were other things that needed to be considered and looked at. So let's jump right into that. Let's talk about these preventative measures, ways to mitigate risk, and different strategies.
Yeah, so obviously the executive protection portion is critically important. But what goes behind that is, let's talk about, say, some social media monitoring. Let's talk about open source intelligence that's going on. For example, the big thing is, when I looking back at my old career, we would have, say, threats against a public official, or an elected official, or a judge. You have to start to think like, well, what is online chatter that people aren't happy with the decision they made, versus what are true credible threats? And I think that getting that information then builds your executive protection platform, or which way you're going to go as far as providing security and protection for the protectee. So it's not just being physically present with the person, it's knowing in the background. And true professional EP people know this. I'm not saying anything new. They know this, is what is going on behind the scenes,
Right.
and what may potentially impact their protectee.
Yeah, and I think doing an assessment and auditing your own internal EP team, right, making sure that it's running as efficiently as possible, is something you need to do, right? You can't just set it and forget it. There has to be a constant, review, and making sure that you're staying on top of trends. There are tons of computer programs out there that folks use to scope out keywords, or different incidents, like alerts. You can monitor anything from traffic to different behavioral patterns that are showing up in cities. It's pretty amazing. Like you have this can set like a geofence in a particular city, and really monitor the company, the executive, whether or not there's a protest going on about some other issue that is in the line of your traffic pattern for the day, to understand what dangers you could potentially stumble into. There's a great company, Scope, now that has a grid program that I think is fantastic for doing things like that. So it's like implementing the technology as well, and just having that awareness of everything that's going on, and even the awareness of the individual that you're representing, right? What their behavioral patterns are, and staying in front of that, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, definitely, Matt. I agree with everything you said. The thing I would add is that, you know, patterns of life, particularly of high profile individuals, that's where we can run into problems.
Yeah.
As professional executive protections can run into problems. And like you said, is doing the self audit of your executive protection team or program is very important, because let's face it, it's human nature to become complacent at times.
Yeah.
Over my career as a law enforcement officer, I can't tell you how many times you would stress constantly, don't become complacent.
Yeah.
It's not the routine traffic stop. It's not a routine domestic violence call. The same thing, the same mindset can be applied to executive protection.
Yeah.
It's not just another day of driving the individual to an office and making sure that they get into their building or get to wherever they're going safely.
Yeah.
You have to constantly be aware of your surroundings, constantly be aware of the climate. And by climate, I mean what's going on with the company, with the protectee, what's going on tangentially with the company and the industry itself, perhaps. So it's very important to just have that self awareness and do those self audits, and maybe sometimes you get yourself in check. You say, you know what? I did become complacent a little bit here. I
Yeah.
have to, tighten the bootstraps a little bit.
Yeah, and the best way to do that, honestly, is a third party, right? So
Right.
if you have an organization where you have an internal team, you should really have a third party come in and do that. Somebody that's just got a clean perspective on doing things, that may be able to see things that you're overlooking, right? And um, training, right? So training people what to look for, how to identify when someone may be surveilling you, right? To be aware of your surroundings, and not just your EP team, like the executives themselves. If you're teaching them what to look for, everybody's on the same page on these things, right? So having that third party that could come in and do that kind of training, or even do like an active shooter training, right? When
Yes.
things start going down, how do you react, right?
Right.
You should be teaching not only your EP professional on what to do, but the executives themselves should have some sort of coaching, so they understand this is what's going to happen if this happens, right? And they're ready for it. So having like that third party, that outside source with the ability to come in and do this training is really, really important.
Right. I think that's also, you made a great point about the executive themselves being trained, because they need to be aware of, if something happens, what the executive protection agent is going to do and why they're reacting in that particular way. And basically, what measures they can take personally just to comply, or if for some reason the executive protection agent is engaged and can't protect the protectee,
Mhm.
they know what to do to get out of harm's way.
Yeah,
Um, the
100%.
other thing is, in regards to training, it's not just uh, the protectee that needs to be trained and to recognize signs and how to react. But I would say it's also important, particularly with people that are the high visibility or the high wealth uh, area, train their family,
Yeah.
right? Train their, make sure that their family and not friends you can't really train, but their family is not putting stuff out either on social media or talking about things, and or maybe compromising security unwittingly.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to train them so they're aware of what it is, and it becomes a team, environment in there, that they all know that this is how everybody's going to remain safe.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be in regards to overt threats. It could be to stuff that's, again, the online chatter, but not to put out that, hey, my father, who's the CEO of XYZ company, is going to be going somewhere and where there's protests in regards to whatever industry they're in.
Yeah.
It's something like that.
So we like to call that cyber hygiene, right? So
Mhm.
just making sure that you're keeping, important, actionable intelligence out of the hands of people that really don't need to know about it.
Right,
At the end of
right,
the day, nobody cares that Daddy's going to New York and he's going to be
right,
staying near the Hilton. Like, no,
right.
nobody cares. But if you're offering that information up to somebody who's monitoring a situation, and I think you bring up a good point, because often it's not the individual themselves. They've already been coached. Hey, don't post this, don't do
Mhm.
that. Maybe it's the spouse, maybe it's the children, maybe it's a family, another family member that's just putting that intel out there that doesn't need to be out there. We live our lives so much online. At the end of the
Right.
day, nobody really cares. I mean,
Exactly.
need to
No,
be.
but the other thing is, and I stress this with my own family, I have for years, and this really applies to anybody, not just the folks that we're talking about that maybe need executive protection. But you're away on vacation. Don't post those photos that you were in Maui until you're back from Maui,
Right.
right? Don't put down, a week before, hey, I'm flying to New York next week for a week, or I'm flying to Europe. Wait till you're home, then post them this way, because there are people out there that look at those things and see opportunity maybe.
Yeah.
So, and that goes for everybody.
Absolutely. And it is it's a balance of learning, what to look for, and it's why the training is so important in doing those things. And listen, we can all sit here on Monday morning, quarterback, what happened, should have had this. So many of the posts that I saw
Yes.
from people in our industry. Why weren't there security with him? If there was security with him, it would have never happened. And a lot of times when you have those conversations with boards of corporations, things like that, they don't they don't want to spend the money. They don't want to be proactive about things. It's more of a reactive knee jerk. Okay, something's happened. We always like to say, when we're doing our consulting work, a lot of times it's a distress purchase, right? Something's already happened, and now we got to clean it up. And
Yeah.
you're really, really trying to put the message out here on the things that you can do to get in front of these things before they happen. And unfortunately, sometimes it takes a shocking incident to happen for executives to really say, like, wow, okay, this happened to XYZ. I'd rather not see something like this happen to us. Right? How do we get in front of this? Right? And I think that's the real opportunity for people in our sector that do the
Mhm.
things that we do to just be united in that message. Right? Here's how
Yes.
you can get in front of it. Um,
Yeah, I think, being proactive is the key, as opposed to reactive. And that goes for, I saw that in my career in law enforcement. A lot of times, something would happen, and then next thing you know, we're assigning more police officers to a particular area. We're being reactive. Whereas if we had recognized the problem prior, we could have pre-deployed resources and maybe prevented it from happening or prevented it from getting to the point where it was at.
sure.
And the same goes for your personal protection. It's being aware of what's going on. It's not operating with a paranoia. It's just being aware, making sure that you're doing everything that you can, your due diligence, that your safety is not going to be compromised or your family's safety is not going to be compromised.
Yeah, there's a fiduciary responsibility, I think, from boards of directors of these bigger
Mhm.
corporations to really making sure that they're protecting their board members.
Right.
At the end of the day, these are the decision makers, the policy makers. That they almost have a responsibility to ensure that all that is being done. And I can't stress enough the importance of using that third party vendor to come in and help with the assistance. So a lot of times these big corporations, they'll have their in-house team, and their in-house team is very comfortable with doing things the way they do things. But when you start talking about different ways of looking at things, having different perspectives, red teaming, engaging in exercises to test these individuals on certain situations, like you can't undersell the importance of these things, right? And just trying to get those messages out as to why this is so important, I think is really important for us to do, right?
I can speak to that a little bit too, Matt. Many years ago, when I was a lieutenant in the Special Operations Command, we did a lot of different homeland security drills. And when you did the internal ones, and the assessments afterwards, it was always like if somebody made a mistake, it was kind of a soft approach, and it was a very light, quote unquote, hot wash of what went right, what went wrong. And then we did other ones where we brought in, say, a particular segment of U.S. Homeland Security to kind of run the drill and provide the feedback. And that was our third party, right? And they clearly define what went right, what went wrong. It was, and expose some vulnerabilities and expose some good things,
Yeah.
but it was them doing it from the third party's perspective that really had value,
Yeah.
as opposed to internally where there is a relationship already, there is some camaraderie, so to speak, not wanting to make your coworker look bad,
Right.
and not really wanting to maybe expose some of your vulnerabilities. So you kind of just brush them aside. Whereas the third party, especially like what you're speaking of, can come in just matter of factly say, "Hey, this is what you're doing right.
Right.
This is where your vulnerabilities are."
Yeah. And I think like for us, the model that we try and push on this is having like a service level agreement that's in place, like a retainer. Almost like,
Mhm.
okay, so you've got these resources now, you've got this third party, you've got this um extra resource at your disposal, to use as needed, right? And maybe because now you have that on retainer, you would green light and say, okay, let's do this exercise, or let's do this, or let's consider that because it's in place already, and it's not a matter of oh no, this happened. What are we going to do now? We got to have everything in place. And there's that delay in time. There's that, decision-making process. Sometimes you can't get a board to agree on something. Whereas if you have a situation where you've got that agreement in place and you've got somebody on retainer to help with this stuff, you get to have those regular audits. You get to have those regular situations. And it goes a long way in identifying dangerous situations and mitigating them in a much more efficient way. Just trying to get in front of things before they happen.
I think, Matt, the world is unpredictable now. I think more so than ever,
Yeah.
and it's ever changing. So there really should be an ongoing security assessment for corporations and high wealth individuals,
Yeah.
because as things develop, like you said, you can't all of a sudden get into now trying to mitigate it. Whereas if you have ongoing relationships with a third party where you can just continually do these, you're going to stay a little bit ahead of the curve as far as safety and security.
Yeah.
And that's the key, right? That's the key, staying ahead of the curve, and I completely agree with you that the ongoing relationship, the in place service agreement is the best model to go for.
Yeah, definitely. And before we wind down here, the other thing that I want to mention, considering the folks that are probably listening to this, there are folks like you and I that are in this industry already, and maybe they were a one man band, private investigator in any market. It doesn't have to be a huge market. Maybe they were a smaller size, or maybe they're an investigator or security professional that has a particular skill set and doesn't cover all those areas, or maybe they're executive protection, that they're not licensed investigators, so they don't have access to all these databases and research tools that we use. Understanding a company like Conflict International kind of works with these other companies, right? They have referral agreements and things of that nature where you can partner up, or maybe you're working already in that big Fortune 500 company and you've got your internal team, but you say, wow, this team is not enough. We need to bring somebody else in. Like those working agreements is something that's commonly done in our industry, and understand that you do have the ability to provide these types of services in any market through relationships that you have with different professionals.
I agree 100% with that statement, man. I think that whether you're a one man band, like you said, or the security team of a Fortune 500 company, anytime that you can bring in a third party, say like Conflict International, as a force multiplier for your services that you provide to your client, it's a win for you.
Yeah.
And, we did that many, many times in the public sector. If, we bring in, whether it was this, state police or the federal authorities, and we team together, force multipliers, right? Do what you can do great, and then bring on folks that can help you out so that your product or your service becomes that much more enhanced and that much more valuable to your client.
Yeah, 100%. So, all right, we're going to wrap up here. Thanks, John, for coming on and talking about this situation here, and just kind of giving your insight with your law enforcement career, and now post law enforcement career, in how to get in front of incidents like this. Again, it's Conflict Pro is the name of the product. It's through Conflict International. There'll be links in the show notes of how to get more information on that. John, any closing remarks here before we wrap things up?
No, again, I just appreciate your time. I think there's a lot of opportunity, but there's also a lot of internet experts out there right now on what happened in New York City last week, and let's let the dust settle.
Yeah.
And like I said, I'm confident the NYPD is going to put a bow on this one, and I'm confident in the job they did.
Yeah, and again, we're recording this on the 11th of December. I can
Right.
imagine when this airs, how much more intel is going to be out there. I think I've seen 3 different versions of a manuscript, out there already.
Yeah, well,
All
the,
nonsense.
yeah, well, the one thing is any type of investigation, even though the arrest is made, the investigation is continuing.
Yeah.
And it's going to continue right through indictment, through up until a trial, and maybe even during the trial. So it's not over,
Yeah.
and more information will come out.
Yeah. And this guy's trying to fight extradition, which is to me is amazing. Anybody would even.
You
It's
know what? It's just a hurdle. It's not going to do anything. It's just going to delay him getting back here. But he will face his day in court in New York. There's no doubt.
Yeah. So, John, thank you again for coming on. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We're going to start regular episodes again in January. I just wanted to jump on before that and talk about this because it's been such a hot topic here, and get a different perspective on it. So, John, thanks again. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys next time on the next show. Take care.
Thanks for checking out the show. This is obviously an evolving story, but Matt wanted to get the perspective out there of how we can help prevent these types of incidents. We'll be back to a full regular schedule in January. We also want to thank Four Pillars Insurance for sponsoring the show. Additional thanks to Conflict International, Campbell Insurance Group, Track Ops, Scope Now, and the PI Institute for Education for sponsoring our podcast. Also, don't forget about investigatorstoolbox.com, where you can type in Perspectives 50 to save $50 when you join. And please follow Matt and Satellite Investigations on LinkedIn. If you have a question or a comment about the show, just email Matt at matthews@satellitepi.com. You can also find him on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Facebook. We'd like your feedback to bring you the best shows possible in 2025, and we'll be back soon with a new show. So make sure you tune in. Stay safe out there. Have a safe and happy New Year.